Hello everyone, today I am reviewing the Catan 3D Expansions box. This includes Seafarers and Cities and Knights, so two expansions in their 3D goodness. Now, most people are going to be here to know specifically about this special edition, this 3D edition, but I will at the end also give my thoughts on the two expansions as a whole. That's from previous plays as well as with the 3D edition. So, well, let's jump into it, and thank you to Catan Studios for sending me this to review and also unbox. And if you want to see everything in here, go and check that video out. Right, so first of all, the most important thing, which some expansions somehow do not manage, the player pieces that are in this box perfectly match the 4 player pieces colours that come in the Catan 3D game. That somehow doesn't always happen, and it really does in this. So all of your ships, your city walls, and all that sort of goodness, they match perfectly. And pretty much everything that the level that was set with the Catan 3D set, well, the Catan 3D expansion set just continues that. So let's talk about some of the things that do match, those tiles. So you've got the terrain tiles, your standard forest bit, your stone mills, your fields of sheep, and your wheat fields and your clay pits. They look pretty much the same. They are the same 3D designs. Now, I did find in this that the sheep fields, the wool fields, and also the wheat fields are slightly lighter in colour. I think that's just maybe slightly less wash was on my tiles for the expansion than the base set. I didn't think it was too much of an issue. They do, next to each other, look slightly different, but wheat fields are going to look a bit different, right? So from that, the components, you're very easily being able to tell by looking at them next to the originals exactly what they are. From readability, that works really well. Now, moving on to the new components, the new terrain tiles, you've got 2 different types. You've got gold mines, which are the wild resource. Now, first of all, they sit quite nicely next to a clay pit and a mountain. They've got a bit more height. So they're middle of those 3 in height, and then there's slightly distinct colour difference. There is still a browny sort of colour, not quite as red as the clay pit, so they distinctively look from the model different. And at a glance, there's a really nice sort of water pool in the middle of that tile that just makes it super distinct. So glancing across the board, you're having no issues working out that that is the very useful gold mine. And they are obviously really helpful because they are a wild resource when you're gathering from them. So being able to know where they are on the board, that's very important. So again, the readability checks out there. Now, I would have liked maybe it's gold, maybe a bit of a bling gold sort of pile somewhere there, but they are really a nice design, and readability and everything is more important, and they're still 3D, which looks pretty damn good. Then you've got the water tiles. Now, these come in 2 types. You've got new borders, because with Seafarers, you're going to be changing the size and shape of that map as you add the water tiles in and around the different islands. So you might have a main chunk in one scenario of the island and then a couple of little spotted islands around, or you might have just sort of medium islands everywhere with sort of rivers or the ocean, seas running in between them, depending on the scenarios that you're playing. And therefore you need the new edge tiles, these new sea borders, and they clip together really well. They're going to hold your game board all together, just like the external borders ones did from the base 3D Catan, if you ever can call that a base game. So they are going to be replacing it when you're using Seafarers, and then there is another tile when you're playing with the Barbarians of Cities and Knights. There is that tracker. Now that also is one of the edge pieces that you're going to be using. It just nicely slots in as a replacement edge piece It has a little bit of that sort of island along the side of it, so when you're putting your tiles next to it, it sort of blends in very nicely. And it's not just a sort of 3D represented bit of ocean with some waves and stuff. It also has slight indentations on the spots that you're going to be moving that barbarian boat along. I think that's a really nice touch because it just allows them, you know, you can nudge the table a bit and that boat's not going to be shifting. Which one's it? It's between two. Which one is it? No. They're nicely, distinctly sort of distant from each other, and that little dimple in the board where the boat then sits just helps you really easily know, and it sits there nice and secure. So all of the new tiles are really, really strong. They're that in terms of design and also in terms of they're lightweight, but they're still very durable, just like those in the Catan 3D base game. So if I was to be picky about the designs, they are the same, which is good for readability. The water tiles, now the ones around the edge, the borders, have some little waves and stuff to them. And I kind of wish that some of the hexagon waves that sort of fit through the middle of the board, I wish they had a bit of something on them, because you could easily have some waves on even some of them, not all of the tiles. But they're still nice, and the fact that they're so low, a bit like the desert, really gives some sort of, I think topography is the right sort of word, you know, that up and downness, because if you've got a mountain next to some water and then a bit of an island on the other side, you really do get a down and an up, because the water is at sea level, effectively, and then you've got the mountains or forests or whatever next to them, sort of towering over them. So you get that nice sort of variation in height, whereas with just Catan 3D you didn't get that change of height as much. You got it between the different tiles, but it was only the little road or parts where you're putting your settlements or cities that gave that sort of really low down part, and the sea does give that. I just wish it had maybe some waves to give it a little something extra. So looking at some of the other player pieces that you're going to be getting your hands on. Now the city walls from the Cities and Knights expansion, they're going to allow you to draw more cards, which is, keep hold of more cards, sorry. These are nicely represented. You don't drop them over the top of cities, you have to put them down and then the city sits nice and sort of snugly inside them. That looks really cool and just adds a very easy, obvious thing that city has been upgraded to have city walls. And then you've got those metropolis pieces that you're going to need in the same expansion that fit nicely on top of a city. They just, certainly with the gold colour, adds a little bit of something special when you see them on the board, highlights them as that important city. You know, they are important. They've got you sort of that fully upgraded part. It just looks nice, and the fact that they really stands out from that gold colour. Again, I'll come back to it, the readability of the board, it makes it really clear which cities have them. One thing that some versions of Catan Cities and Knights have sort of been iffy on production-wise is the knights. Sometimes it's been really hard to work out when you flip your token over, is it an active knight or not? And also, unless you know the faces on them, what level is it? Is it a level 1, 2 or 3 knight? Now, first of all, the knight tokens are really cool. They've got these banners and they've different shields, but the banners have, right, one sort of thing, a 2 or a 3, so you can really see, just by looking at them, what level they are. And then those little helmets, they're a little fiddly, but when you put them on, you can very much see, because they're different colours to the player colours, that sort of grey colour, you can very quickly see that is an activated knight. And you can therefore look around the table, around the board, and see that is the number, because you can count. Looking at the helmeted ones, you can count the flags, and that just makes it really quick to do. You're not having to be like, oh, is that active, is that not, because I can't quite tell, the helmet colour being different. I was a bit sort of, oh, it'd be great to have those in player colours, but actually no. For looking across the board, you know, something the other side of the board, you need it to be really a different colour, and that's why that does work quite well. Whereas originally I thought, not sure about that. So I was happily pleased about that. One slight negative on those pieces is that the flags are very they're not brittle necessarily, but one of mine at least has a bend in one of the flags. And I think that's just, it's a slight soft point on that flag. They're quite thin, and you could fix that with like a hot water technique. If you know miniatures, you'll probably know that sort of technique to unbend plastic and reset it, sort of thing. It's a slight negative, and for a game that's as expensive as this, well, that is something to be aware of. But overall, the knight design I did really like. But there is some components that slightly let the game down. Now, obviously, you can't have those 3D tiles upside down, so they've included cardboard tokens that allow you to have them face down in a pile and flip them over to reveal when you're using like Fog of War. So some of the Seafarers expansions, some of the Seafarers scenarios, sorry, they mean when you're exploring out. There's a Fog of War where there's tiles that aren't placed. You can't see what's there until you explore them, and that cardboard tiles are how you do that. They're a little small, but that's a small nitpick. Also, they could have been maybe like a sort of plastic or whatever, just to make them a bit fancier. And that's just because of the price of the game. The one part that really does concern me with this, though, is the gold tokens, those Catan tokens, gold coins some people call them. They are very weak. In an expansion this expensive, or a collector's edition of any kind, they are part of it that sticks out as very cheap feeling. They're quite thin, they make a bit of a noise because they're plastic, they're not cardboard, but they really should be either metal or some kind of nice plastic sort of tokens. And they're the one part of this box that it's like, that's amazing to have this box, but I'm going to need to upgrade that. And you're paying that much money for this? You're paying for a collector's edition, effectively. You shouldn't be thinking, I need to upgrade an element of this. And that is the one part that really does make you feel, oh, they've cheaped out a little bit here. This one part of this big box just isn't, it's not even up to the sort of standard that the rest of the box is up to. You've got those lovely designs for the tiles. Even the number tiles, tokens that you put down are of a sort of solid plastic. I'm not a huge fan of the sort of slightly transparent yellow, but that's a personal thing. But you've got all of that, and then even if they just use that same solidest plastic to make those tokens, they would feel better. There's that one token that doesn't live up to the rest of the box. The final thing that I'd originally noted down as a negative actually turns out to be a really good design. And that's because I was really concerned when I unboxed this that the building tiles were much smaller. We're talking like a third of the size of that from the base game 3D Catan. And I thought, well, that seems really odd. You've reduced the size and then added more information on them. But actually, it's turned out that's a really good idea. They're still really legible. You're never having an issue reading it. It's not small text or anything. And it's there in front of you, allowing players around the table, new or old, just to remember that recipe cost without having to think about it. Or if it's just lost, oh, what do I need to make a ship or whatever? That's what I need. Okay, so actually they turned out to be good. But why did they turn out to be really good? Well, when you're playing Seafarers in particular, you've got a lot of stuff on the table. Rather than just that normal map size, it's bigger because you've got an extra area of sea or whatever carving through the middle or round the side with islands. So the main board in the middle of the table takes up more room. So therefore it was really useful to have smaller player aid tiles because it meant that you could fit them into a smaller player area to accommodate that bigger board. And obviously you want to accommodate the bigger board, it's the main board in the middle. So having just a smaller one just meant you weren't needing as much room for your player bits off at the side, which could be really useful to people with smaller tables to game on. If you've got a massive one, it doesn't matter anyway. But I found actually, if you're getting 4 players around this table, having just a little bit more room where you've got your roads, your boats and all of your cities and settlements, and then a small thing at the side for building, just to let you know, that helpful reminder, that was actually really useful. And especially when you've got those nice ring binders for the city improvements, taking up another little bit of room. Again, just having that tile that you could move around, it's smaller, you could have it off to one side. It just means that you don't have to pile things on top, to squeeze things onto the table, which, sometimes if you're having to hide your reference sheet under components, well, there's not much point in having it. So that turned out really well, actually. So from a production point of view, which is what most people are going to be watching this review for, it continues on. Exactly what you got in Catan 3D, that is the level of quality you are pretty much always getting in this box. You're getting that for your sea tiles, your border tiles, you're getting that for the same tiles that you had before, your mountains, your forests, etc. You're getting that for the new gold mine tiles and sea tiles. You're getting that quality of tile. You're getting all of the nice and very, very easy to read components such as those knights. You're getting all of it is almost at that standard. It's like those gold coins that just sort of let it down, really. The rest of the sort of components in this really stay strong and allow you to sort of have this vivid, beautiful sort of Catan board be brought to 3D life. And it takes sort of the Catan 3D to the next level because it adds that extra up and down across the board, and it just makes more visually different maps. So if you're liking Catan 3D and you've got the money, then you'll probably very much enjoy this. And for that is the people it's aimed at. It's aimed for the people that got that and want to expand on it, and it expands on it in just the right ways. So if that's all you wanted to know, is it as good as Catan 3D in terms of production quality? Yes, it is. Apart from those gold coins, it kicks it out the park, scores the goal, whatever. It trades perfectly the sheep for clay. It's what you want for the Cities and Knights or the Seafarers expansions, and it's combined into one big box. Is it worth it for you money-wise? That is obviously going to be something for you to decide. But let's quickly now touch on the 2 expansions, if you want to know a little bit about them. So Seafarers is the expansion of the 2 that's my favourite. It feels like much more of the same, and that's because even though you're adding sea trade routes, which allow you to go road, settlement, boat, and that's really cool because you're going off to other islands and stuff, it feels very much the same. Yeah, you've got the new gold mines, which are wild. They're really cool. You've got to love a gold mine. But Seafarers, it has scenarios. Now, one of my friends, Danny, absolutely loves the fog of war sort of maps where you don't know what's in the middle and you can explore. Personally, it's extra randomness in a game that's already a little bit random. So I don't like that too much because let's dial back the randomness, but let's have some cool islands, and that's what some of the other scenarios. There's 9 different scenarios for Seafarers in the box, including like a sort of basic, not tutorial style one, but still a simple one, and that's great to start on. And that 9th one, well, that's basically giving you guidelines to go and make your own, and there's many more you can get online if you want to. So Seafarers just spices up the game in different ways because it still feels you're playing Catan, but there's a couple of variations to the rules. Maybe going to this island's going to get you some points, but maybe you need a little bit more points. But then you can do the longest trade route rather than longest road in different ways that would previously have been blocked off, because now you can just go around that ocean sea area. I much prefer Seafarers over Cities and Knights, and that's mostly because of it's just as easy to teach as base Catan. Realistically, of the two, if you're playing Catan for the first time, you could just about get away with Seafarers, I think, in there, because it doesn't change too much. But it's a lot of fun, and just having the different islands or setups different, even more so than before when it's just randomized or whatever, with a lake or a bit of water going through, it just adds a little something extra. So that's Seafarers. For me, it's the next one to get if you've got Catan. Cities and Knights, I like, but I find it harder to teach because there's the whole stuff of city improvements where you can then, you're rolling another dice, so a barbarian might be attacking. Therefore, you have to sort of teach the understandings of this is how strong the barbarians are. We need this many knights to then defend against them. That's a really interesting dynamic though, because you get to the stage where it's like, I need to try and help everyone work together to defend against the barbarians, but I don't want to work harder than anyone else. You don't want to be the person that's single-handedly fighting off the barbarians, because then you're wasting your money on knights and activating them, and everyone else is probably building stuff that scores them points. So there's a really nice dynamic there. And city walls, I love city walls. The chance to actually mean when the robber is rolled, the 7 is rolled, you can hold on to more cards before you have to start discarding. It just allows you to be that person that hoards cards a little bit more. But then you've built the walls, so you've spent cards. I mean, I'm talking it like I'm excited by it, and I am. It's just, out of the two, it's the slightly harder one to teach. It's the one that's slightly harder or more going on about it. Although some of the Seafarers scenarios do have a bit more going on about them as well. Like I say, I prefer Seafarers over Cities and Knights, but it's a glorious box that combines both of them and allows you to expand your Catan 3D games. And that is a plus for me. So anyway, if you want to see everything that's in this box, I did do an unboxing of it, showing you all of the components spinning around. You've seen a lot of it probably throughout this review, but if you want to go and see everything, go and check that out. And make sure you check out other stuff on the channel. Again, thank you to Catan Studios for sending this to me, because it's such an epic collectorsy sort of thing for my collection, and it's been a privilege to get this to the table, and it certainly will be continuing to get there. Anyway, until next time, have a great day gaming.